very much. After that great introduction, I thought, oh my goodness, am I reading any of my shape poems? So I've quickly, completely changed the order. And I'm going to start with one of the last poems in this book, which is a very clear shape, so I hope that you can see it. A lot of the poems do depend on visuals. Various people have commented on what this shape should signify. I know one of my friends thought it was half of a fluted wine glass, which wasn't my intention. But you would have to look at it and decide for yourselves. But I'll read it to you. Just before I read it, one of the other things I do a lot of in this book is experiment with punctuation, and lines of verse often start with a piece of punctuation. In fact, one of my poems actually starts with a comma, which of course is not what you're meant to do. Well, this is what we learn with English grammar, but it's what I use a lot in this collection. So you'll understand some of the things I do with my hands to try and show you that on the page. Unfamiliar. Withdraw from love, set back your sights. Refrain from reaching for the heights. Ward off that swooping wing from titillation to the blight that comes from tasting of too much delight. Instead, let space stay unfamiliar, for more of less is. First poem in the book, it's called Accidental Commitment, and the question to ask yourselves is, who is making the commitment? Because I left the door ajar, a sparrow hopped inside to scar the skirting board for fluff, twigs, leaves, a scrap of cloth with which to line the temporary nest it planned to build itself within this bare-walled, desolate, and what I would have called, till now, most uninhabitable heart. Do come in. This is a poem that was written after a song by Wally Page, and later I was told it's also very similar to a poem by Thomas Hardy, and I've forgotten the name of the Thomas Hardy poem, so if anybody knows it, do tell me afterwards. This is the day, after Wally Page. This is the day the skylark likes, and so do I. This is the day the blue sky peeps through the greying clouds and the sun climbs high. When the sheep have eaten to their fill, when the air is fresh and the wind is still, and my feet cry out to be in the hills, and the midges dance up the little brook's rill, and so do I. These poems were written shortly after I came back from Japan, so some of them are very short and very haiku-like, and the next one is, although it has a title, Lark Song, and it's of an experience I had on the top of the mountain, lying on the top of the mountain. Lark Song. His notes ring together. The heather pricks my face. Greenness in heaven. When I was writing this collection, I was also doing a lot of research on the poet Edward Thomas, and several of the poems, including my experimentations with punctuation actually, owe a lot to him. And I wrote a few poems about his beautiful house on the top of a very steep hanger in above the village of Steep in Hampshire. And here's one of them, and it's my journey up there to discover the house where he wrote many of his poems. The top of the hanger, above Steep Petersfield. Below, it's spring, clear green. Up here, no mist, no wind, the trees grey-brown and bare. As the hill turns, a chimney pokes up, then roofs rise, stringing along a road. A lopsided sign dances in brambles, chairs lean upended against the patio table, a horse watches from the back field, and the poet's house, carefully hewn from red brick and oak tilts on the edge. Not something to take seriously for my friend Jeff Kaplan. Not something to take seriously. The world is blue and grey. Everything reduced somehow to edges. Each to our bit in these poo-stick wars. I cut into the pantomime. My part is so amusing. Muffing the duff lines, laughing at the thin, clean light in your eyes. Oh, the craziness of it all, not to be taken seriously. Moving on, I've got another collection coming out with Cinnamon Press, which is wonderful for me. I might need it. In 2010, called Joy Change, much of which was written in Japan. So I'm going to read a few things from that so you have a taster of what's going on in the book. There's a character in the book called Mr. Mori, who's Japanese, and I use him sometimes to talk about a Japanese view of England, which of course I experienced quite a lot. I lived there for 7 years. And this is Mr. Mori's report. It's in sonnet form. Mr. Mori's report. Everything is upside down in England. They print books from back to front. They serve soup for starters. They overcook fish. They eat mushrooms raw. On Valentine's, the women receive chocolates from the men. They limit drinking hours. They put their soapy bodies in the bath and drain it daily. They keep futons on the floor, on stands. They never sleep next to the blanket and happily set their heads towards the north. For breakfast, they do not take rice or seaweed, for which they have just one word. They use umbrellas only when it rains. But apples are cheap. You can eat the skin. It tastes of heaven. All of that is so true, believe me. Apples in Japan, very, very expensive and very tasteless. And you have to peel them. So I'm going to read a short series from this book because it's a book that's based on my time in Japan. A lot of the poems are divided into seasons, and I thought, well, let's read a few from autumn. The most beautiful for Yukari. Or perhaps I should say before I start that in Japan I was living in Kanazawa, and Kana means gold, and Zawa means stream or swamp. So it's referred to in this poem. The most beautiful for Yukari. Coming weary from the gold stream, dead ends everywhere, to the west capital, maple temples burning red in the mixing bowl. 8,400 taxi drivers hunt the curb. And you pick out the local guy, the one that doesn't make up stories, the one that knows where to find the most beautiful tree. Over at the palace, down by the gate, he says.